chilling criminal history involving the man accused of killing this woman, Frazier Baker. She's the Charlotte mother, had been missing for a week when her body was found in a car in West Charlotte on Thursday.
She told her family she would be home within the hour. There was nothing unusual about the statement. No urgency, no hesitation, no indication that it would be the last time they heard from her. Hours passed, then a night, then a day. The absence became measurable, not in emotion, but in gaps, unanswered calls, unreturned messages, a timeline that no longer aligned with reality. At first, the situation appeared ordinary, almost explainable. Adults go missing temporarily. Phones die. Plans change. But as details emerged, the simplicity collapsed. Locations didn't match. Statements conflicted. A routine drive ended somewhere it shouldn't have. What began as a search
The search continues for Frazier Baker, who's been missing since Thursday. I'm here with friends and family who continue to search for her and are also passing out flyers. Just what are some of the things you want people to know right now?
I want everyone to know today at 5:30 here at 1121 Bettisford Road, we will be handing out flyers. Anybody welcome to come and get them. We need them everywhere. We need all hands on deck. We need all boots on the ground. We need everyone help to find her. So
quietly transformed into an investigation. And what investigators uncovered raised questions that extended far beyond a single night. Questions about proximity, patterns, and what was happening long before anyone realized something was wrong. This is not the story people thought it was. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. When the disappearance of Frazier Matisse Baker first became public, it appeared unremarkable on the surface. An adult woman had not returned home as expected. There were no immediate reports of violence, no public alerts from authorities, and no early indication that a crime had occurred. Initially, the situation resembled many missing person cases that resolve within hours or days. However, several details quickly separated this case from routine disappearances. Baker had made a specific statement to her family about her expected return time. She had completed a known errand. She had left her child in a safe and planned setting. These details suggested intent, structure, and predictability, elements that rarely align with voluntary disappearances. Early assumptions leaned toward benign explanations, a delayed stop, a drained phone battery, or an unplanned overnight absence. Yet as time passed, those explanations failed to account for mounting inconsistencies. Communications stopped abruptly. Her vehicle was unaccounted for. Her digital activity ceased in a way that did not align with her normal behavior. What ultimately distinguished this case was the widening gap between what was said publicly and what investigators were privately confirming. While initial messaging suggested uncertainty, evidence began to point toward a more deliberate sequence of events. The case was no longer defined by absence alone, but by unanswered questions embedded in a narrow window of time. Frazier Baker was a 31-year-old woman living in Charlotte. She was raised within a family structure that maintained close contact, particularly in matters involving childcare and daily logistics. Those closest to her described her as reliable and consistent in her routines. Her educational background and employment history reflected stability rather than transience. She maintained an active social circle composed primarily of family members and long-term acquaintances rather than casual or recent connections. There was no indication that she lived a high-risk lifestyle or frequently changed environments. Community involvement was limited but consistent. She was not publicly outspoken, nor was she disengaged. Her presence was regular rather than conspicuous. This consistency would later become a key reference point in evaluating her disappearance. Baker was the primary caregiver to her young son. Her daily schedule revolved around childcare responsibilities, family coordination, and household routines. She regularly communicated her plans to family members, particularly when arranging childcare or transportation. Her decision to drop her child off with family on the day she disappeared followed an established pattern. There was no indication that the arrangement was unusual or connected to long-term planning. She reportedly expected to return within a short time frame. Plans for the future centered around maintaining stability for her child. There were no known preparations for relocation, extended travel, or separation from parental responsibilities. Baker's romantic relationships were not widely publicized. However, investigators later confirmed that she had ongoing interpersonal dynamics that were relevant to the case. There were known tensions within at least one relationship, though details were not immediately released. Publicly available records later revealed prior domestic-related incidents involving an individual connected to Baker. At the time of her disappearance, these details were not part of public discourse but became central as the investigation progressed. Much of her private life remained private by design. This limited early speculation, but also delayed broader understanding of potential risk factors. In the days preceding her disappearance, Baker maintained her usual routines. She communicated with family members regularly. There were no reports of distress, emergency planning, or sudden changes in behavior. No significant deviations were noted in her movements or interactions. Financial activity, phone usage, and social engagement appeared consistent with prior patterns. Certain messages and statements, initially viewed as routine, gained significance later. These included confirmations of location, timing, and intent to return home. On the final day she was seen, Baker followed a predictable sequence of events. She transported her child to a family member's residence. She informed relatives that she would return within approximately 1 hour. She then departed alone. Investigators later reconstructed portions of her movement using phone records, vehicle data, and location tracking. Her digital footprint narrowed abruptly after a certain point, with no further outgoing communication. The lack of activity was not gradual. It appeared to stop within a defined time frame. Baker was last confirmed seen during the early evening hours. Her final statement to family was clear and time-specific. She did not indicate any change in plans. Based on travel estimates, she should have arrived home well within the stated time frame. She did not. Attempts to reach her went unanswered. No location updates were shared. No explanation followed. Immediate inconsistencies included the absence of phone usage, failure to return her vehicle, and deviation from a route she had taken many times before. Concern escalated within hours. Family members attempted repeated contact through calls and messages. When those efforts failed, they began reaching out to others in her circle. The decision to involve law enforcement followed shortly after it became clear that her absence extended beyond normal delay. Police classified the case as a missing adult. Initial efforts focused on locating Baker rather than identifying criminal involvement. Early investigative priorities included checking known locations, interviewing family members, and attempting to ping her phone. Certain actions common in high-risk cases were not immediately implemented, in part due to the absence of overt signs of violence. Family-led searches began quickly. Social media posts circulated her name, photograph, and last known details. Tips from the public were logged, though many were unverified or contradictory. Authorities searched select areas based on available data. Some locations were prioritized, while others were not immediately examined. The use of technology, including vehicle tracking and digital forensics, expanded as the case progressed. Coordination between departments increased once the case escalated beyond a routine disappearance. Several days after she was reported missing, Baker was located inside her vehicle. The location was within the Charlotte area, but not along her expected route. The condition of the scene immediately altered the direction of the investigation. Authorities determined that her death was not accidental. Evidence present at the scene suggested external involvement. Other expected elements were notably absent, prompting further forensic analysis. At that point, the case officially transitioned from a missing person investigation to a homicide inquiry. When Frazier Matisse Baker was first reported missing, the case was handled under standard missing person protocols. The initial assumption was that she was voluntarily absent or temporarily unreachable. That classification changed only after several specific findings emerged during the search phase. The most significant development occurred when Baker's vehicle was located. She was found deceased inside the car. The location of the vehicle, combined with the condition of the scene, immediately altered the investigative framework. Law enforcement identified indicators that were inconsistent with an accidental death or medical emergency. While officials did not publicly release every detail, they confirmed that preliminary evidence suggested outside involvement. Official statements to the public were measured and brief, focusing on the confirmation of death and the continuation of the investigation. Internally, however, the case had already shifted direction. Investigators began working under a homicide framework prior to the public announcement, redirecting resources toward suspect identification, forensic analysis, and evidence preservation. The announcement that the case was being treated as a homicide came several days after Baker was first reported missing. This delay reflected both the time required for initial forensic review and the need to notify family members before making the information public. Investigators narrowed in on a suspect through a combination of timeline reconstruction, digital data, and personal connections. Attention focused on Lorenza.
On Thursday, Lorenzo Inman Jr. is charged with murdering Baker and is being held in the Mecklenburg County Jail tonight. And our Michael Warwick has learned Inman faced a
Inman Jr., an individual known to have a close personal relationship with the victim. The relationship between Baker and Inman was central to the investigation. Law enforcement confirmed that they had been romantically involved. This connection placed Inman within Baker's immediate circle and gave investigators a starting point for examining motive, opportunity, and access. As detectives reviewed Baker's final movements, communication records, and known interactions, Inman's name repeatedly surfaced. This convergence of factors elevated him from a person of interest to a primary suspect. Inman's background was examined for patterns relevant to the investigation. Court and police records indicated prior interactions with law enforcement. While not all past incidents were directly related to Baker, some involved allegations consistent with domestic conflict. Investigators evaluated whether these incidents established a behavioral pattern. The focus was not on isolated events, but on repeated conduct that could indicate escalation. Domestic-related calls, prior disputes, and documented tensions were reviewed to determine relevance to the current case. This background review informed both investigative strategy and charging decisions, particularly in assessing risk factors commonly associated with intimate partner violence. Inman was arrested after investigators concluded they had sufficient probable cause. The arrest occurred days after the homicide determination, following evidence analysis and suspect interviews. He was charged with murder, along with additional charges related to assault and domestic violence. Each charge carries a distinct legal meaning. The murder charge alleges intentional or knowing responsibility for Baker's death. The domestic-related charges reflect the nature of the relationship and alleged conduct preceding the death. Legally, charges represent accusations, not conclusions. Practically, however, they signal that prosecutors believe the available evidence meets the threshold required to proceed toward trial. The vehicle where Baker was found became the central physical crime scene. Investigators processed it for fingerprints, biological material, and trace evidence. The position of the body, condition of the interior, and any signs of disturbance were documented. Forensic findings, including autopsy results, played a key role in confirming homicide. These findings helped establish cause and manner of death, ruling out explanations inconsistent with criminal involvement. Physical evidence linking the suspect included items recovered from the vehicle and other locations associated with Baker and Inman. While not all evidence has been publicly detailed, authorities confirmed that material connections supported the arrest. Digital data was critical in reconstructing the final hours of Baker's life. Phone records were used to establish her last known communications, movements, and contacts. Investigators analyzed call logs, text messages, and location data. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses and traffic cameras was reviewed to confirm vehicle movements and timing. This footage helped corroborate or contradict statements provided during interviews. Investigators also examined whether any digital data had been deleted or altered. Gaps in phone activity and missing communications were treated as potential indicators of interference or concealment. Multiple individuals were interviewed, including family members, friends, and associates. Statements were collected at different stages of the investigation, allowing detectives to compare consistency over time. Some statements evolved as additional information became available. Investigators assessed whether these changes reflected clarification or contradiction. Discrepancies were flagged for further examination, particularly when they involved timelines or interactions with the suspect. Despite arrests and charges, several questions remain unresolved. There are gaps in the timeline between Baker's last confirmed contact and the discovery of her vehicle. Certain movements during that window have not been publicly explained. Some evidence has been acknowledged but not detailed, leaving uncertainty about its scope or significance. Additionally, certain actions attributed to individuals involved do not fully align with official summaries, raising questions about what has yet to be disclosed. The family continues to ask how specific decisions were made, why certain steps took the time they did, and whether all available evidence has been accounted for. Following the arrest, Inman appeared in court for initial hearings, including bond considerations. Prosecutors outlined the charges, while defense counsel began challenging aspects of the evidence and procedure. Defense strategies are expected to focus on evidence interpretation, intent, and reliability of timelines. Prosecutors face challenges typical of intimate partner homicide cases, including reliance on circumstantial evidence and the absence of third-party witnesses at the moment of death. As of now, the case remains active, with pre-trial motions and hearings determining what evidence will be admissible at trial. Media coverage initially framed the case as a missing mother, emphasizing the search effort. After the homicide announcement, focus shifted toward the suspect and legal proceedings. Some details were widely reported, while others received limited attention. Social media played a significant role in maintaining visibility, circulating updates, and prompting public discussion. However, online narratives sometimes outpaced confirmed facts, complicating public understanding of the case. This case reflects recognized indicators associated with domestic violence, including prior disputes and escalating patterns. Similar cases show that intimate partner relationships often place victims at heightened risk during periods of separation or conflict. Systemic challenges include delays in classification, limited early resources, and reliance on post-incident evidence rather than preventive intervention. The suspect remains in custody as legal proceedings continue. Justice, in this context, depends on a complete accounting of events and a verdict based on verified evidence. What still needs to come to light includes full disclosure of forensic findings, detailed timelines, and the resolution of outstanding questions. This case demonstrates how disappearance investigations can evolve rapidly when new evidence emerges. Timelines matter because early assumptions shape investigative direction. Overlooked warning signs carry measurable consequences, particularly in cases involving known interpersonal conflict. The outcome will depend not on speculation, but on what can be proven, clarified, and sustained in court.